What kind of person fences off your own backyard and demands you pay to use it? That's the question I woke up to one sweltering July morning when I stepped outside to find a splintered wooden barrier cutting my property in half. My name's Marcus Reed, a mechanic who'd saved every penny to buy this modest slice of suburban Freedoma 3-bedroom fixer-upper with a yard I dreamed of turning into a garden for my daughter, Lily. But there it was, a fence, slapped together overnight, with a letter from the HOA taped to it. Dear Mr. Reed, it read, due to a survey discrepancy, this section of your property is under HOA management. Monthly rent of $200 is required for access. My blood boiled. I'd bought this land fair and square. And now Karen Whitaker, the HOA president with a reputation for ruling our neighborhood like a petty dictator, was trying to extort me. I crumpled the letter and stared at the fence, its uneven slats mocking my dreams. Lily, barely 7, tugged at my sleeve, asking why we couldn't play in the yard anymore. I didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing: I wasn't paying a dime. The story started 6 months earlier when I moved into Oak Ridge Estates, a quiet community with cookie-cutter houses and manicured lawns. I'd chosen it for Lily, hoping the safe streets and good schools would give her the childhood I never had. But whispers about Karen and her HOA reign reached me quickly. She was a heavy-set woman in her 50s, with a voice that could curdle milk and a knack for turning neighbors into enemies. At my first HOA meeting, I watched her berate a young couple for planting roses without approval. Standards must be upheld, she'd barked, her jowls quivering. I kept my head down, fixed my house, and planned my garden. But Karen had other plans. A week before the fence appeared, she'd knocked on my door, clipboard in hand, claiming a survey showed the back third of my yard belonged to the HOA. I laughed it off. Me deed was clear, and I'd had the property surveyed before buying. She stormed off, muttering about legal action. I didn't think she'd go this far. Now, standing in my backyard, I felt the weight of her audacity. I called a lawyer friend, Sarah, who confirmed the HOA's claim was nonsense. The deed was ironclad. The land was mine. But Karen wasn't banking on legal truth, she was banking on intimidation. I tore the letter down and marched to her house, Lily trailing behind, her small hand in mine. Karen's sprawling McMansion loomed at the end of the cul-de-sac, its pristine lawn a testament to her obsession with control. She answered the door in a floral dress, her smile as fake as the plastic flamingos in her yard. Marcus, about time you paid your dues, she said, not even glancing at Lily. I held up the crumpled letter. This is my land. Karen, take down the fence, or I will. Her eyes narrowed. Try it, and you'll regret it. The HOA has lawyers you can't afford. I left, my heart pounding, knowing this was war. The next morning, I grabbed a crowbar and headed to the fence. Karen was already there, flanked by 2 HOA board members, Tim, a weaselly accountant, and Gloria, a retired teacher who followed Karen like a loyal dog. You touch that fence, and we'll sue you into oblivion, Karen snapped, her voice carrying across the street. Neighbors peeked from windows, drawn by the commotion. I didn't back down. This is my property, and you know it. I wedged the crowbar under a slat, ready to pry it loose, when Lily's voice stopped me. "Daddy, don't fight," she whispered, tears in her eyes. My resolve wavered. I lowered the crowbar, but not before noticing a neighbor, Mrs. Chun, filming the whole thing from her porch. That video, I later learned, would change everything. Karen's smug grin haunted me as I retreated. I spent the next week digging into the HOA's records. With Sarah's help, we found a pattern. Karen had pulled similar stunts before, strong-arming neighbors into paying for violations that didn't exist. She'd pocketed fines, misdirected funds, and bullied anyone who questioned her. But there was a twist, Mrs. Chin's video had gone viral on a local Facebook group. Comments flooded in. Karen tried to fine me for my mailbox. She charged me $500 for a non-compliant shed. The neighborhood was waking up, and Karen's empire was starting to crack. I realized this wasn't just my fight, it was everyone's. I organized a meeting at my house, expecting a few neighbors. 30 showed up, spilling into my living room, their stories of Karen's tyranny fueling a collective rage. We formed a plan: expose her, legally and publicly, and take back our neighborhood. The confrontation came at the next HOA meeting, held in the community center under fluorescent lights that made Karen's face look even harsher. She sat at the head of the table, gavel in hand, ready to steamroll the agenda. I stood up, holding a folder stuffed with evidence bank statements, forged surveys, and emails Sarah had uncovered showing Karen siphoning HOA funds into a personal account. "This stops now," I said, tossing the folder onto the table. The room went silent. Karen's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly, slamming her gavel. "You're out of order. Marcus, sit down or be escorted out." But the neighbors weren't having it. Mrs. Chin stood, holding her phone. "I've got proof of your threats," she said, playing the viral video. Others chimed in, their voices rising, recounting years of harassment. Karen's allies, Tim and Gloria, shrank in their seats, their loyalty crumbling under the weight of the truth. Karen tried to pivot, claiming the funds were for community improvements. But I was ready. I projected a bank statement on the wall, showing thousands transferred to her personal account. Gasps filled the room. "You fenced off my land, demanded rent, and thought I'd roll over," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. "But you didn't count on us standing together." The crowd erupted, demanding her resignation. Karen's face turned crimson, her hands shaking as she screamed about lawsuits and respect. But the tide had turned. A vote was called, and by a landslide, Karen was ousted as president. She stormed out, vowing revenge, but the room buzzed with a new energy hope. The fallout was swift. With Sarah's help, we filed a class action lawsuit against Karen and the HOA board for fraud and extortion. The fence came down the next day, not by my crowbar, but by a contractor hired with HOA funds, now under new leadership. Karen's McMansion went up for sale a month later. She couldn't afford the legal fees or the shame. The lawsuit uncovered more. She'd embezzled over $50,000, which we recovered and redirected to community projects, including a garden for Lily and her friends. But the real victory wasn't the money or the fancy, it was the neighborhood. People who'd barely spoken now waved across lawns, shared tools, and planned block parties. Mrs. Chun started a community watch group, and I was elected HOA treasurer, tasked with keeping things transparent. Looking back, I see that fence for what it was, a symbol of greed, but also a spark that lit a fire in us all. Lily and I planted our garden that spring, her small hands patting soil around tomato seedlings. She asked if Karen would come back, and I smiled, pulling her close. Not if we stick together, kiddo. That lesson, community over control, courage over fear, stayed with us. It wasn't just about my land or my fight. It was about standing up, together, for what's right. And as the sun set over our reclaimed yard, I knew we'd built something stronger than any fence Karen could ever put up. The end.